Explained by the Billy Meier contacts, mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracies, and more. Compiled by David Chance, revised October 18, 2023.
Dark energy, see also cosmology. Contact Report 228.
Is it possible to determine the mass of matter in our visible material universe if you completely exclude the other 6 belts?
It would be unscientific and arrogant to try to do this, because the entire expanse of our universe is so vast and involved in constant change that it is impossible to calculate exactly. Moreover, our universe, like any other, of course, consists not only of gross matter, but also of pure energies, one of which is black energy, as we call it, which is responsible for a certain form of anti-gravity in the material universe, and is estimated to account for 3 or 5 of all universal energies. Matter must also be seen in different forms. So on the one hand, the visible and tangible matter, which is very small to be calculated with about 0.55, while on the other hand, still the dark matter is 1.55. But as I said, this information is only based on estimations and calculations, which, due to the constant change of the visible material universe, are not constant but extremely variable. To want to name exact results would therefore be nonsensical and arrogant and, moreover, ridiculous, because exact calculations cannot be made due to the constant change of the universe.
Then I guess it would be fair to say that our material universe belt is actually dominated by black energy, right?
That is of correctness.
We know, after all, that the total universe does not expand forever, but only expands until the time of 155.5 trillion years, and then succumbs to contraction. During the expansion process of the entire universe, the visible material universe also becomes larger and larger if I look at the whole thing correctly. And since this must be the case, there must also be different temperatures in our universe, because I assume that heat and cold must be generated by the constant change movement. Am I correct in my assumption?
That is of correctness. Although the temperature fluctuations are universe-wide and very minimal, they occur mainly in those parts of our material universe where the uninterrupted change through the outer, immaterial belts takes place. This is what we call the transitionless open change zone.
This transformation zone does produce a rushing sound, as Ptah taught me on the Great Journey. I was also allowed to hear it through the technical devices in the giant spacecraft. It was simply gigantic. Ptah explained to me that the Earthlings call this phenomenon cosmic background radiation, and assume that the Big Bang took place there in that zone, and that the universe also ended there.
Which does not correspond to correctness, as you know.
Of course, because that's where the actual total universe begins with its other 6 immeasurable belts. Ptah also said that the differences in temperature are actually very small and therefore only subject to tiny fluctuations, caused by differences in density in all regions of our material universe.
Contact Report 230.
Then a question regarding Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity. He taught that the light rays in the vicinity of large masses run in curved paths.
That is of rightness. Therefore, it is not a theory, but the reality. However, the light rays are not only bent in the outer space by large masses such as stars and planets, but also by so-called wild magnetic fields in the outer space, as well as by neutrino masses and dark energy masses, etc., which assemble in the outer space. The same applies equally on planets, but in hardly measurable form if artificial light sources are used on them, because they also bend unnoticeably when their light encounters larger masses.
And since light has a mass and a weight, it can probably also be used for the braking effect if it is only strong enough. So I think that a tremendously strong spotlight could, for example, even bring a moving vehicle to a standstill.
This is of rightness, but the light source would have to be beam-bundled and tremendously strong.
Contact Report 435.
If I am right, then that means that our material belt, that is to say, our visible, material part of the universe, will persist for 32,000 more years before a transformation occurs again. And how must one imagine this transformation?
The entirety of the coarse matter material of every kind renews itself. Consequently, therefore, new galaxies, stars, and planets, and so forth come into existence. With this transformation, which takes place within about 2,000 years, certain residues remain, which are deposited both in the transition zones and in the material belt, as dark energy and as particle-like dark matter, which can, with special technologies, be captured and measured. This dark matter is, therefore, very much older than the actual coarse matter material of the visible material belt. That is to say, than the visible part of the universe, which is mistakenly referred to as the universe by the Earth humans, although this material belt constitutes only one part out of the 7 parts which make up the actual universe.
Contact Report 529.
But well, what I am allowed to say is at least that the dark energy is the actual centrifugal force of the material belt, which is erroneously considered by the terrestrial science of astrophysics and astronomy to be the entire universe, leaving aside the other 6 universe belts because they are unknown to scientists. The centrifugal force runs through the entire material belt, whereby it spreads out according to its rotation. And that the speed to the outside increases more and more is due to the fact that the centrifugal force in the inner area of the belt is logically lower than in the outer areas. And as the extension of the matter belt increases, the outward speed also increases, and consequently the galaxies, etc., move away from the inner area of the matter belt with ever-increasing speed. I am not allowed to explain more about this.
That is enough for the time being, because your explanation will give our scientists many nuts to crack, as it will also do with many other things. These clever people do not even know that the creation of universal consciousness is a pure spirit energy individuality, which itself does not think, but where everything is aimed at causing all things to become existent, to pass away and become again, by purely spiritual physical and natural physical laws. But since letting something become an existence in the human sense, such as an idea and love for the thing, etc., is called and valued as something valuable. Already in primeval times, attempts were made to explain this to the human beings by speaking of an idea and love of the creation of universal consciousness. This, although the creation does not consciously create these values, but only practices them spiritually and physically, which is called universal consciousness for the understanding of the human beings. In the human sense, creation is not consciously active, as is characteristic of the human being, but rather individually in terms of spiritual physics, from which natural laws and laws of nature arise, which in a causal form work independently.
This also corresponds to our findings.
Contact Report 530.
On the 3rd of November, we talked about the dark energy in the universe, through which everything accelerates outwards. But this dark energy, respectively the centrifugal force of the rotating matter belt, has nothing to do with the so-called dark matter, which is being puzzled about by earthly scientists. This should be said before more rascals come along and claim that dark energy and dark matter are one and the same thing.
It is good that you bring it up, because they are actually 2 different things, because the dark energy is one thing, while the dark matter is something completely different, but I am not allowed to make any explanations.
Exactly. That is what you explained on my great journey, which is why I have also mentioned it now, so that the matter is clear. Dark matter is really a form of matter, an extremely fine form of matter, but not a pure form of energy, which is where centrifugal force comes from. Energy itself is a mass at rest, so to speak, but it has the ability to unfold power from within itself and have an effect. At least that is how I remember your explanations. However, when it comes to energy and power, the human beings of the Earth always talk about only one thing in relation to energy and power, even though they are fundamentally two different values, because energy is not power, but power is created from energy.
Your words will not please many Earth humans, but they correspond to what should really be understood by energy and power.
Contact Report 544.
When I was in the 4th grade of primary school, and my teacher was Hans Frey, it was in 1948, your father, Svath, explained to me that altogether there are 7 major powers of nature in the universe. On the one hand, the gravity, then the electromagnetism, as well as the strong and weak nuclear power, and further the...
Stop. You are not permitted to openly name the 3 others, as indeed my father already had forbidden it to you. These 3 other powers of nature are not yet known of by the terrestrial physicists, and they are still not allowed to discover them, because premature cognitions would have severe consequences.
All right, excuse me, it remains withheld. It is certainly not in my interest to betray confided secrets, as I really only wanted to talk about the fact that there are not only the 4 natural powers known to the terrestrial physicists, rather also the remaining 3 which are still unknown to them, which exist as certain tiny and ultra-tiny particles, as related to the gravity, the electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear power. Also, the dark energy and the dark matter are included in the realm of particles, whereby certain of these particles, which are indeed also energies with powers, are supposed to be discovered in the foreseeable future, as you have said recently. Although it will still take a while, the success is to be understood, indeed, according to your explanation, as a prediction. Additionally, I assume that I may say that these, let us say, the normal or simple elementary particles in turn contain, in 7-fold wise, still tiny particles, which, as I learned from Svath, can be designated as ultra-tiny, ultra-elementary particles, so to speak. Even when I with this statement draw attention to the fact that a fundamental 7-fold chain of natural powers exists, and that other particles exist in the already known and unknown elementary particles, and that only then, below that series of 7, that begins, wherefrom originally everything evolved from pure spirit energy, I thereby betray no secret, because all of that corresponds to the spiritual teaching, in which I indeed also mention these things openly. And since the terrestrial physicists, especially the particle physicists, lack the inner and fundamental knowledge about the actual spirit energetical structure of these things, they anyway are not able to comprehend anything of which I speak. There would probably have to be exact statements and explanations in order for the physicists to get any benefit from it. Among the physicists, the physical cognitions in relation to the true and fundamental structure and the exact interrelationships of the material are indeed still in the material realm of the material, because till this day they have not yet become so smart that they would have arrived at the thought that the origin of all material, everything which exists and the entire universe as a whole, cannot be explained simply from the perspective of the purely material realm. So, the elementary particles, as such, despite their energetical tininess and inconspicuousness, are also purely material and not immaterial, because the immaterial is of pure spirit energetical nature, and that energy alone is the absolutely one and only origin of all things and all material of any kind. And thereby, belonging to the material is everything which is solid material, liquid and gaseous, which can also be perceived by the human being and measured in the most various ways and detected, as your father explained to me according to your physics. However, that which is fine fluidal and high fine fluidal consists of pure spirit energy, and this is not graspable for the human being. And alone this spirit energy is the origin of all existence of those things which can be registered, detected and measured in any manner by the human being, while, up to the present time, it is not yet possible, nor will it be possible for a long time into the future, for human beings to provide evidence for, and measure, the creational natural spirit energy. But since those terrestrial physicists who deal with the origin of life, and therefore also with the solid, liquid and gaseous material, and who attempt to explore everything in this regard, lack even the most minimal cognition regarding the spirit energy from which everything in its absolute origin has arisen and come about, they are still very far from being able to research for and gain cognitions about how the process of coming into material being results from the purely spiritual energy. Like children who poke around in their food annoyedly and do not find in it what tastes good to them, so the terrestrial physicists poke around in an area where they cannot find the real origin of all things. Of course it is necessary, with the research related to this, to recognize the purely material aspects of the material, and then to in the right way utilize these cognitions so as to do no harm with them. But if the real origin of all things is to be recognized, then after all the cognition must mature that it lies in the spirit energy. However, this energy has nothing to do with that which is erroneously designated as spirit by the human beings of Earth, which as such is supposed to embody what is the human consciousness. The spirit, that is to say, the spirit energy, is not the consciousness, because the spirit or indeed does not think, and it creates no spiritual property, because this is reserved for the material consciousness alone. Thus, in human beings or other life forms, also no illness of the spirit can appear, rather only a consciousness clouding and consciousness illness, and so forth, because the spirit, that is to say, the spirit form, the spirit energy, is absolutely off limits and not capable of being influenced by anything whatsoever, such as diseases, etc., from the material realm.
Contact Report 592.
Dark matter is not to be confused with the factor called dark energy, which corresponds to the universal centrifugal force.
Contact Report 795.
He, Svath, left very many descriptions in this regard, such as about how he made you see the central stars in 3 galaxies and what the actual energy and matter are that make up the Dern universe. It is very much more than Science D.
That's enough said. You do not need to mention more. Besides, he told me emphatically to keep quiet about what he taught me, because scientists have to find out for themselves what really is. The 3 central stars, which we simply call black holes, have been discovered in the meantime. But the full reality of this is not yet known to earthly scientists, nor is the real truth of the energy of the existence of the universe, nor the basic matter of the universe, which they call dark energy. Years ago I once talked to Peta about this, but I did not say what this matter actually is in truth, because officially I am not supposed to talk about it. The clever ones have to find out everything for themselves, and only slowly, because too much knowledge, too much too soon, only brings harm. The truth of this fact is proven by the far too rapid technical development alone, whereby the murder instrument's weapons have been brought to such a level that with them the Earth can fly apart into the infinity of the universe. Fortunately, it is not yet possible for the Earthlings to penetrate into the other 6 universes of creation, although they suspect that these exist, but see their existence as dimensions of the future and past, and do not know that the 6 universes are their own spatialities and precisely universes of creation.